I mean, I think for me, it's the HUNDEN ban being lifted. I mean, what a shit show. Integrity Commission. Like, I think it's just proven that if you've got enough money for lawyers now, none of that actually matters. And I do think it's important to have something like ESIC around. Like, I do think that that's necessary, but not in the form it at the moment. Just feels like a little bit of a joke to me. And in South Africa, we have something. I mean, obviously, because that's where I was based. I grew up with esports here, and we have an organization that tries to do this whole thing as like an oversight committee, and it just turned into this like fraudulent shit show where they did nothing, and it kind of this reminds me of that. So it's just ugly to me, and I that was the thing that's been bugging me since I've been reading about it. It's just got under my skin a little bit.
I mean, the quick point is just that for me is just kind of like laws that only punish you based off of like let's say like it's a traffic fine. If you just get a bunch of traffic fines, all you have to do is pay a bunch of money. I mean, anybody that has a lot of money doesn't really care if they get traffic fines. And I feel like that's kind of the same thing now that's been revealed with ESIC. If you have a lot of money that you can like reliably pony up to just get a lawyer, does ESIC even matter to you? So that's all I've got on that.
Yeah, the actual thing that I think's so dark, it's actually why it's a good ugly point, not just bad, is I don't think people have even realised, like, that's the floodgate open. Fans don't get it because they just think, so wait a minute, they let Peacemaker off and now 100. It's like, no, anyone who gets a lawyer can just get this reduction. Now, look, I will say it's not as simple as that. Like, for example, we still have a totally separate issue. I know a lot of people think these are conflated, but they're not. The whole thing with like Gary and Roban and that thing with the majors, that's Valve. Valve took their own judgment on that one, and that's why hence people like Raging could just like never play a major or whatever. Like that, Valve took their own super heavy-handed approach. The problem is the ESIC one was essential because the ESIC ban is for non-majors. It's for like ESL circuit, Blast circuit, in theory, when Flashpoint or whatever, you know, the smaller tournaments, a lot of them mirrored the rule set. So in theory, that was supposed to be where it's enforced. So the problem I have with it is this, like, first of all, if you're smart, everyone should just get a lawyer. I mean, these are all top teams as well. Every single person should just use the same exact exploit that Peacemaker and the Hunden have been able to use and get the ban reduced as much as possible and just get playing again. Because I'd imagine basically the claim is that like you're in some way like denying these people like a livelihood, but where do you derive your authority would be the premise, right? Like they haven't broken a law of the land, for example. So I would imagine it's almost treated as though you're like conspiring against them in some fucked up way, maybe even defaming them unless you could prove in a court of law that they did what you said they did. Like, remember, a lot of the investigations, the other part people miss with ESIC, the investigations are done behind the scenes and you never get to see them because that's just the nature of how they're done. So you have to actually, this is a key point, it's like being a journalist. Like, you'll never get to see my sources or my working out. So you have to trust that I am a credible person, that I do not lie. So that's why, as a result, you'll notice there tend to be two classes of people. There are the ones who are considered the gossipy tabloid type people, and then there's the people who are the legit ones. And that's why the legit journalists, if you notice, the number one trigger for people like me and Richard Lewis, it isn't to call us like an asshole or say we're wrong. It's if you say we're unprofessional. It's if you say we lied. It's if you say we don't have integrity. Because these are the calling cards of our industry. So the problem I have for the ESIC angle is, I think essentially this just shows they're a paper tiger. It's like if you just bring a lawyer, they just have to roll over. Because there's another thing I think people haven't thought about. Right? The reason normally in esports that you can use contracts that might not hold up to fuck people over is because, for example, if you're a massive team, the player doesn't want to go to court because his career's now. He can't wait a year to sort this out in court. He has to play the next match and get a salary. The crazy thing about the ESIC scenario, and this is actually something I sort of predicted a few years ago, when I said, how can this work if no one funds it though? Like, it can't just be ESL funds it or ESL and Blast fund it. Like, in a way, the players and maybe even the fans should fund it. Because the problem is, without a war chest, how do they ever do these court cases? Like, if I had to guess, they probably don't have loads of money at ESIC. They probably couldn't afford to do a bunch of these cases. And by the way, God forbid, like 10 of these coaches come at once and say, if you want to keep us banned, we're all going to court in all these different countries. Like, that's a nightmare. I don't think you can even logistically do it if you're ESIC. If people don't know, you can go and watch some old By the Numbers episodes. I think Richard even said they had a fairly small crew of people at the beginning. I don't even think they have that many people now. So the other flaw, and by the way, I'll just throw this in as well. That's also why the name itself was a reach and a half, in my opinion. Esports integrity. Motherfucker, you're barely getting control of tier 1 Counter-Strike. Remove the esports part, mate. Like League of Legends is a daughter of that. That's like the entire world. How are you going to cover that? So, unfortunately, what I think we've seen is it's another classic example like CSPPA. Yeah, everyone wants a body like that to exist. It could do so much good for the space. I'd even say these bodies, rare opportunities, have done good. They have done some cool things. And by the way, just revealing all that bug stuff was pretty relevant and pretty key. And I think did need to come out. CSPA, some of the things they brought up were relevant. But if you can't ever enforce the things you say, it does become a bit pointless at the end of the time. And my problem is, I'll bring it back to what I've always said on By the Numbers. The fear I have, much like CSPPA, is unless you actually do what you are supposed to do, it's worse than like, well, at least they tried. No, now you're occupying the space of what would be necessitated. Like the joke is, if we do want an esports integrity coalition, isn't ESIC in their way? Like, haven't they already got that part of the market cornered? So they kind of have to do the job right or get the fuck out, I'm afraid. That's just kind of the nature of the industry.
It's interesting that you brought up the money thing, though, because when I was reading up on their report where they did the whole thing on Hunden about how he had obviously like shared this document, so they'd said there that they had a forensic analyst going through. The first thing I thought when I read that was like, how the hell did they pay for that? Because that is super expensive. And I think that that's the issue, like you brought up. I just think it's a money thing at the end of the day. If you have one of these organizations that's properly funded, that has the resources or has the legal support, then you can't just lawyer up and fight them. And it is needed. Like, we do need something like that because there is these problems, and it would be good to have some sort of oversight. But if there's no money there, like at the end of the day, and it's at the end of the day, no money, and you know that if I can just hire a lawyer, and we all know with lawyers, if you've got more money than the other person, you're going to win. It kind of just makes the whole argument mute. And then it's going to be difficult because the next time they come out with a ruling, I just don't know if anyone's going to take it very seriously.
Yes. What you really need, and sadly the ship sailed, and you need like go back in time 10 years, you need it to be like me and Richard Lewis, but we're like the X-Files with Mulder and Scully, you know. Like I'm like, Rich, I'm pretty sure Fosh is cheating. He's like, I didn't see Ethan. I didn't see it. I'm sorry, my head was turned at the time. I didn't see it. Like, go get him next time. Fosher. Like that's what you need. You need people just willing to just go to the ends of the earth. And unfortunately, dude, I actually get the vibe. This is actually the transition period to the opposite. I actually think the industry is going to become more like football and sports and become mega corrupt. I don't think it will like tune up and become awesome. I think essentially, like, even though we're bringing it up as like a silly point, it's a real point. It'll become like, if you are wealthy enough, the law doesn't apply to you. Which, spoiler, that's how the real world works, guys, in case you're not aware. Like, I always make the point on this show, if you know how industry regulation works, industry regulations always seem to conveniently sort of like allow the top guy in the industry to keep doing what he's doing, but then just fuck the guy who's trying to compete with him. Like, it's the same in this space. So the real problem is the only person who's fucked is probably like the tier 2.5 coach who got wrecked and isn't going to go to court and didn't even think of hiring a lawyer. Like, that guy is absolutely fucked. But the guys who are all at tier 1, like, you're almost a fool if you don't try it at this point in time. You is, well, you might get unbanned. Why not? Go for it. And also, I will say as well, the problem with the Hunden case, and this was something I struggled with myself, is because all that extra drama came out of it, like the thing of like maybe he manipulated like Nico and he knew Nico had like, you know, was on the autism spectrum, because that just seems so horrible. It's not technically like particularly illegal if you don't know, guys. So the problem is, because you just really don't like Hunden when you hear that story, it makes you think he should get even stronger punishment. But actually, that's what makes it so tough. Because what did he actually do? Like, he sort of tried to trick Nico into like admitting that he did something. Like, that's not really that bad, actually. Like, the idea you would manipulate him is bad, but the actual action is not like, it's not like he murdered. Put it this way, he didn't even do anything as bad as what Config did. Config tried to actually have a real life fight with someone. Like, that's clearly worse. So the other tough thing as well, in my opinion, is like the Hunden one is the one that makes it look the worst because everyone just hated this guy. So if he gets off, it's like, now what do we do about all the people who just did the crime and didn't do any salacious shit? Like, it feels like they should all be off too, right? Right, go then, Maui. What is your ugly point? See more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, you know, be a pleb and don't.